So today I have a good friend of mine here, someone I've seen his journey for the last few years evolve. And today he's becoming a force in the Nigerian space, helping a lot of young people. Today I would like to present to you our guest, Ekezie.
Good to be here today. Really great to be here. I think it's an overdue conversation, and it'll be good to catch up to over the mic and camera. So
yes, good. It's very interesting, but I do think that I've seen you evolve from entrepreneurship to this, to almost becoming a platform where you're trying to power young people. But I would ask the question, take us back in time. Who was the one person in your life that shaped you, that gave you this paradigm that is becoming a movement today?
I talk about my mom quite often, so it definitely will be her. I think that there's a lot that I inadvertently learned from her, and I think the stats is clear that children tend to learn more from their mothers, their primary caregivers, which typically would be moms, and she provided the infrastructure, the psychological infrastructure, but even beyond the infrastructure, the tools. There's many times she, I butt heads with her for speaking wrong English, for using my tenses wrongly, for showing up in ways I should not have. She was very objective. When we had conflict with other people, she was not the sort of person, and is not the sort of person who would automatically just take the side of your side because you're her child. So it was, a lot of that was very character building, and I think that is the rawest material that constitutes who I am and who I've become and who I am becoming. There's that. We were also talking about this before we started, but when I was in secondary school, one of my teachers, who I talk about quite often, he taught me government. His name is Mr. Mo. I grew up in Calabar, in a relatively small town, and I met him when I was in SS1. This was a period where 3 years before I had done really terribly academically, and because we had moved to a new city, I was born in Lagos, we moved to Calabar. I started school a little later than other people, so cliques had formed. I really struggled to find, a social gang in some sense, and that affected me in ways I didn't even understand, but I just saw I was, bottom 20% of the class, which was not the way my academic history had gone before. But anyways, fast forward 3 years after, I went to this new school and I encountered him and started out with him, just butting heads with me, really, and it's like, you should get your acts right. And he would call me out very authoritatively, very publicly, and for me, that was just really annoying, and I just wanted him to stop doing that. So I started to get my work done. I started to write my notes. I started to do my homework, and slowly I realized that I actually started to like that process of doing my homework, of going back home and being very curious about my homework. And my dad teaches political science, and so Mr. M taught me government. And so when he gives us government homework, I'm very curious. I'll go ask my dad questions. I'll do the homework with him, and Mr. M was as generous with his praise as he was with his his blame. So when you were doing really well, he was vocal about that. He would give you a platform. There were times when I'll go on holiday and he'll be like, Kennedy, read up about. So one of the first assignments he gave me was, oh, your name is Kennedy. What do you know about the Kennedy family? And then I started, it's like, go and read about the Kennedy family. Next class we have, you're presenting to the whole class everything you know about the Kennedy family. So I went, my first point of call was in Qatar. I don't know if you remember in Qatar Premium, used that, learned everything, watched the assassination videos of JFK, learned about the family, his wife, her aristocratic background, learned about his uncles, his father, his nephews, like everything I could. I came to class the next time. We had no business. It wasn't in the curriculum, but he gave me 10 minutes out of a 50-minute class to just talk about that. And things like that really built my confidence. And that was who he was. I remember one of the to-go statuses I posted back then, Kennedy Ekezie is the house that Mr. M built. And in many ways, that was very true. So he's a force.
I love that. You've also shared with growing up in terms of growing up in university lecturers. Did that pressure you in any way?
Not really.
So, having parents who are academics and the competition and the environment where lecturers and most of our parents tend to manage or measure their worth directly or indirectly with the success of their children.
Okay, that was the
At the
case.
science and academic success. So sometimes coming from a place where you were doing well to a point where you're falling behind can build tension. But how was that relationship with your parents as you evolved?
Yeah.
And in the larger context of the Nigerian society where our parents are great at their wing.
Yeah. So okay, so for sure, that I mean, the years where I was struggling, it was just not. My dad was very unhappy with me. My mom was also not pleased with me because when I was struggling in school, she was a teacher then before she started lecturing. So, and she taught at the same school. It was University of Calabas Demonstration Secondary School. So her colleagues would go to him like, Kennedy's notes are terrible, in terrible shape. I didn't see Kennedy in class today, or he's thrown in 20 minutes after class or started. Something along those lines. And, that wouldn't make a mom very happy with her son. So we struggled, but I also did not feel like my parents did not love me in those years. We still felt like they loved me. The day we collect results is always a very big day at home, because you're nervous. What is it going to be? Oh my God. It took me till like SS1 when I found Mr. Mem, when I started to do well, to not be nervous on those days. But for those 3 years, oh my God, just dread like results collection because it's going to be bad and like I'm going to get punished for being so, my parents are going to be unhappy with me for like a week after that. And every time I play during the holiday, they will remind me that I did badly. So, but I'll say I thought that was what every parent was like. So I thought every parent was like that. I just assumed they were parents, and I never thought of it through the lens of, okay, these are university lecturers, these are teachers, and this is what it's like. I didn't feel like it was special, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't assume that's what everyone has. But beyond that, the conditions at home was like every other home. It was jovial. There were lots of jokes. At some point, you just knew what you had to do. By the time I was in SS2, I was very self-motivated on my own. In many ways that they even had to start because, so I became punctuality prefect as right around when I started SS2. So a lot of times I'll leave home. I was a day student by like 6:30 a.m. I'll wake up by 5. I was so enthused about my parents would be like, you're not getting enough sleep. You should get enough sleep. Like that now became the thing. No more you don't want to go to school and you're lazy. It became the exact opposite. I was obsessed. I wanted to do my job well. I would iron my uniforms, get it right. Take care of my books. I don't know how well I did on that front, and I could have done better, but I was really excited about that. And when I got into university and started to debate, oh my God, they didn't have to manage that process anymore. The snowball was just rolling. Yeah.
Someone said that one of the things that actually why we oftentimes get bored is because we do less of what makes us feel alive.
Yes.
Just even listening to what happens with Mr. MM was striking a part of you that was very central to your core.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm curious as to where you picked up your entrepreneurial side from.
I don't think there are different parts, of me, because so when I got into university, I was 16, and the first thing I did when I went to University of Calabar was to join the debate team. I probably did that before I finished my clearance. When you get into school, that was one of the first things I did. And I was a really bad public speaker then, started to get good, and I had a debate coach and a debate committee that recognized my potential and said, okay, we're going to, thankfully, I joined in September, literally September, and by December, I joined in August, and by September, I was selected to join. So 1 month in, a little over 1 month in, I was selected to join the team that was going for a debate competition in Ghana. There were 4 people, and so 2 really good senior debaters. And because those senior debaters were going to graduate soon, they needed to start to train a bench of people, younger debaters. So it's almost like I got a diversity slot, for that. But me and my friend Victor, because they had recognized my potential and they thought that investing those resources in me will help me get well. So in September, we went for that. We won that competition. It was African Universities Debate Championship, All African Universities Debate Championship. In December, got the opportunity to also go to South Africa, to go to Malaysia, to compete at the continental and at the world stages. And all of those really helped. But the following year, when I was in my second year and I was still growing as a debater, one of the things that just became It's like, oh my God, we go to these debate competitions, we talk about all these things intellectually, concepts like feminism, social justice, but I felt very unsatisfied just talking about it cerebrally. So I went and gathered a group of friends of mine. It's like, what can we do with these things? How can we even teach other people? I think when you get to a certain level of, I don't know how to put it, of knowing, you want to bring other people along. It's you feel like you're not doing enough when you see other people going through problems are solvable. It's just like watching someone die because they didn't have paracetamol. How annoying is that? And you knew that it may not be very easy, but if I worked hard at this, I could figure this out and solve for it. So we started a social enterprise at that time called the Calabar Youth Council for Women's Rights. And it was just a way, like, we know these things, but the society we live in is really not that. So
it was more like an advocacy movement.
Yes, it was an advocacy movement centered on access to rights for women, but specifically on ending the practice of female genital mutilation, starting in Calabar. And I did that for all 4 years. And so for me, that's where I'll say the underlying instinct for entrepreneurship comes from. It's, there's a problem and I know I really want to solve it. When I decided I was going to become an entrepreneur was in 2019. I was in China. I was working at TikTok at the time. And I was also writing my thesis for grad school. And I knew that I needed to make a decision for where to go next. And thankfully I had the presence of some of my really good friends, people who I admired, who were around my age, and a lot of the people who I respected were going to build companies, and I thought, if all of these people are going to do this, my friends, like there's, 3 of my friends, they're Nigerian American, they rejected their jobs at Bain, Microsoft and Facebook to move back to Nigeria to live in a village to build a company. I'm like, come on, like this is exactly what it is. This is exactly what it is. And they'll share their investor updates with me. I'll read it, we'll catch up. I'm just like, that's the life I want to live, like trying to solve a problem that's complex. And if these guys can make such a decision, can make such sacrifice, then who am I? Like, why can't I do this? So that was when I made the decision. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew that I'm in. Like, I'm in. It will take a while to figure this out, but I'm in. And so moved back to Nigeria, moved to Akwa Ibom, and was there, tried to spend time figuring out what do I even build. And ultimately, that's how, my co-founders and I, we started to work on Kippa. Did that for about 4 years, moved on from it last year. I'm currently working on something new. But for me, it's just, it's 2 things. On the one hand, it is intrinsic. You want to play at the edge of your own potential, and you don't want safety. You want to be exposed to risk in some sense. And there's aspects of your intrinsic motivation that sets on fire. And on the other hand, it's just like, look, there's so many problems that if you say you're intelligent, then solve a problem. Like, that's, for me, I think that has become the ultimate bar for that I'm setting for myself for intelligence. It's not knowing words or knowing things. It is, if you say you're intelligent, try to solve a problem. You won't always succeed, you won't always succeed, but try to solve a problem. Go all in at it and know when you're done. And when we decided to move on from Kippa, when we made the decision to shutter the company and move on, mixed reactions, like, oh, what's, but I'm like, well, a lot of people who you get reactions like that from have never tried anything. Have never tried anything. So Naval said something like, intelligence is getting out of life what you want out of it. That's it. So that's,
I think it's important because sometimes we live in a world where people don't know how to cope with what's not working. Culturally, they'll say, give me more time, right? And there is the tension of the pride of some entrepreneurs that will say things like, I don't know how to give up. God didn't build it in my DNA. And so how do we find the balance for people that feel like, no, I don't know how to give up, and they stay in something longer than they should? And for people that feel like, okay, I think it's time to quit, and they quit too early. There is always the art of the balance. Knowing, how did you feel you were not quitting too early or you were not staying too long? And just knowing precisely when is the time. And also dealing with investors, because sometimes it's easier when it's still an idea.
Yeah.
When you have investors, funds, and they're all looking at it like, guys, what's the milestone, what's the numbers, and you know the model is not yielding.
Yeah.
And convincing them becomes a challenge, because for some of them who don't understand the market or in the industry, they feel like you're not giving it enough time. You're not pushing hard enough. You guys are not paying attention. There's no focus here. So how do you navigate all of those things?
I didn't have any troubles on that front. Thankfully we had investors who are by and large quite reasonable people, and some of them just really endearing people, who have built things themselves and understand how things go, and they were up to date along the different phases of the journey with all of the micro pivots and many experiments, and the rationale for, okay, this is why, and ultimately, as founders, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, you have to understand that your destiny is in your hands. And if people back to you because of the insight you have, and there's a reason why you're the founder. And being a founder, when you think about it, what is a job that a founder does? It's make decisions. That is, a founder is not the best operator. A founder is not the most experienced person, but a founder is the person who is able to amalgamate different sources of information, combine it with your intuition, and make this. I feel like the CEO title should be Chief Decision Maker title. And that's it. And that's what people pay you for. When you have a CEO, it's to make decisions, make hard and easy decisions. So, on the investors part, it was a very, clear, and relatively not complex process. Just because we had really great people around the table who understood. But also, when you think about it, what does quitting mean? Is quitting, okay, you're leaving this thing and you're going into a cave to bury yourself. Oh my God, this didn't work. Jesus Christ, I was 25 years old and I have 70, productive years. Okay, maybe that's too much, but 60 productive years of my life ahead of me. So it is, okay, this didn't work, and there's very many experiments that that went into it, and you figure that out, you have the conversation with your team, and you come to that point. But okay, how do I take all of these lessons to improve the chances of success for all the things I'm going to do next? But more importantly, what am I learning about myself? What am I learning about my life's mission? What am I learning about the things that I should be spending
about the
time
environment that is Nigerian?
Yes.
About finding the team, hiring right.
Yes.
And all of those things, because success oftentimes is an amalgamation.
Yeah.
Right. There's the environmental factor. There is also the ecosystem factor. But looking at startups in Nigeria today, many people are of the opinion that you said, I rather start something as get a job and work in a big company. Today, most people are already in that space where they're being motivated and inspired to start.
Yeah.
Do you think there should be deeper motivations powering our art of start? In a sense where that the desire to start is a great invitation, but should we also pay attention to the value of what the value creation process, or is it discovery? It's something that unfolds, or it's something that I see a need here. I think this guy puts it very right. And what's his name? My good friend, Limitless boy. It said, yes, there is a gap in the market, but is there a market in the gap? Right? So you can still, this thing is not there, but what's the size of the market? Yeah. So they tell us that maybe 75% of startups fail within the first 5 years, another 30% join. So in Nigeria, it becomes too high a number. And you start thinking, okay, is it because we don't have it, we're undercapitalized, or is it because we are in a hostile environment? There are multiplicity of factors, but I think if anybody can speak to it, are those who have worn the shoes.
Yeah.
In being an entrepreneur myself, I've seen evolutions.
Yeah.
I've seen death and I've seen death, I've seen life. I've seen rebirth, right? And every time you reborn with new lessons, new discoveries, that you're not the same entrepreneur. Yeah. You're not the same guy. Yeah. Like you never step in the same water twice. Yeah. I think with entrepreneurship and every pursuit, but just really looking at that startup culture and trying to understand what does it need? What do we need? Or what do we need to tell our startups today to increase that potential for success?
I don't know what to tell startups directly, but I think for people who are considering starting a startup, firstly, just be sure, I think make the commitment. I want to be an entrepreneur. And that is the primary vehicle through which you would make your life gifts manifest. I think we need people at jobs, but for some people, it's a lifestyle. It's beyond a certain company, because if you make that decision, oh, I see a problem, no matter what problem you identify first, you would realize how almost like childish your initial thought of what the problem is. As you go deeper, you're like, whoa, it's a much more complex problem, it's a much bigger problem. And if starting out your motivation to become an entrepreneur was tied to this is the problem, once you discover it's a complex problem, it becomes difficult for you to stay. But when you say, look, I'm going to go and I'm committing myself to this journey of being an entrepreneur, of using my skills, using my network, using my resources and everything I have to try to solve a problem in a specific area, then it becomes easier for you to withstand challenges overall. But one of the things I've learned from the past 5 years or so, and especially while building Kippa, is just you also have to pay attention to your intrinsic motivation, and as you build, get much clearer on what is your life's mission. I believe that there are people who are building companies or trying to build companies that they are so disconnected from, and I think YC puts it nice when they say like a founder market fit. I think that is incredibly necessary. There are things that should make you look at the things that make you sick in your stomach, that make you want to throw up. And I believe if you find a really good problem, and you get clarity, the most difficult thing is getting clarity on the problem. And so if I could go back, what would I do differently? There's a lot of time, and before we started building Kippa, we traveled, we went on the road, we went to spend time in markets, we lived in Aba for a bit to just get close to businesses, right? We moved to Akwa Ibom, we were there for, we hit the street. So for us, you have to play by the book, and that's really ingrained in our DNA. But your understanding of the problem, you'll get smarter about the problem over time, and you see it for the multiple-headed snake that it is. So I think it's very important to, I'm saying many things, but as an entrepreneur, figure out your life mission. And when you figure it out, don't try to lie to yourself. Don't try to pretend to yourself. There are many entrepreneurs who are not making hard decisions. When we announced the decision to specifically pull back Kippa Pay before we even shuttered, Kippa specifically, a very senior member in the ecosystem called me, why didn't you guys just coast? I'm like, really? Like, is that what you would do? Maybe that's what you're doing, and I know that's probably what they're doing. Coast. Like, I'm 25 and you say I should coast, like for how many years should I coast? 5 years, 10 years, and spend the rest of my life coast? Like, it's madness. It doesn't make no sense. And I think people need to filter the sort of advice that they're getting, and so yeah.
I would also talk about, I know you're a dreamer and you're a builder and you're onto something exciting on this. I don't know if you have the space to share that yet. To tell us
what I'm building next.
Yes.
Not yet.
Okay, let's talk about why you're still in Nigeria, why you're still in Africa, because we take that for granted, right? These days, the way for many young people is, oh guys, on the other side of the Mediterranean Sea are your opportunities. So everyone is looking to America, to Canada, to Australia. But Africa is a continent whose time has come, they say. Yeah. Africa is a continent who is still a sleeping giant. And what are your plans to waken these giants?
In many ways, we me staying back here, it's not even from I am just a martyr for the continent. That's not what it is. It's because I'm happiest at home. I am in the center of my of God's will for my life here at this point in time in my life. And in many ways, I deeply believe that if we get it right, Africa has the opportunity to be the world's center in maybe 100 to 150 years. It might not even take that long. Like, if we get it right, there's many things that only we have, especially and by culture, I don't just mean, arts and craft and how we dress, but from a cultural sense of knowing who we are, from a, the moral order, the spiritual order that is a prerequisite for societies to build prosperity. Africa is one of the last places in the world where you still have that, so we have something great. And Where we're lacking, of course, it's very obvious. It's overflowed on the economic front. We don't have commensurate economic prosperity to our potential. And the way we...
Why is that though?
Oh, it is because I don't want to sound philosophical about this, but it's very easy to see when you interact with the average young I would say Nigerian, because I'm very well versed. I spend time with thousands of young people every month. A lot of people don't know who they are. A lot of people don't know what they are capable of. And so they are so susceptible to, I guess, lies that they tell themselves, but that other people also tell them, for you to be successful, you cannot do that legitimately, or, there's this just gross sense of nihilism. A lot of people are living their lives as uninvolved spectators. That is one of the biggest problems. A lot of people are living their lives, a lot of young people are living their lives as uninvolved spectators. There's this concept of just learned helplessness.
Learned helplessness.
You're just helpless. No, I'm helpless. Like, oh, I'm just waiting for good things to happen to me. And it's, my boss is terrible. The government is terrible. My parents are terrible. My boyfriend is terrible. Everyone is terrible but you. So what are you doing about that?
There's not a lot of capacity for self-reflection.
Yes, there's not enough of that. And a lot of that also stems from the family. How are we raising children? I find myself almost everything links back to this these days. And I think there's a reason why. How are we raising children? A lot of parents are also especially fathers, especially men. And, fathers in the context of a home play a very, very, very important role. But overall, doing an abysmal job of it. When you average out fathers, even the ones who are present, the bar for what it means to be a present father is incredibly low. But it starts from how we raise children. Even the belief that you can do good things. There's a story I told recently because I only thought about it for the first time. Yeah. In 2016, my debate partner and I, we were the best debate team in Nigeria, and we got invited to compete at Harvard.
Victor guy?
No, Faithfulness.
Okay.
And we got invited to compete at Harvard. And when I received that letter, for 2 weeks, I just thought like, oh wow, like I have this letter, I'm going to show my grandchildren that at one point in my life, Harvard invited me to debate there. Like I was really cool. I never for once thought of like, the potential of going. And 2 weeks after, Faithfulness came to my house in Calabar. So he was talking to my dad and he mentioned it. I was like, oh yeah, daddy, that's true. By the way, I went and brought the letter and showed my dad. And he's like, why have you not told me all this while? Because I didn't think so. I didn't think it was important. And when he looked at the letter and he looked at me and he's like, you will go. That was the first time I thought I could go. It was only after he told me that, and not because he had the money to send me, by the way. And I knew that, where are we going to get all this money from? That was the first time I went to Google how to get a US visa. All the while, I never thought I would. And so, imagine I did not have my father in my life. I did not have someone like that to say, oh, you would do this. Like, I didn't know it. I didn't know how much I needed that. I didn't know how much you need a masculine figure to. And that's just one very small example. I think fathers, is the job of fathers to set standards. You start in families, but also to set standards in society for what excellence looks like, for what you should aspire towards. And that's why my dad and I butt heads a lot when I was doing badly in school, because I was falling short so badly, for the standard that was set of me. So I think there's that reason, human potential is probably most grossly underdeveloped.
I think you're touching into something that I love. You've spoken a lot about parenting. I know you're to that. Yeah. To talk about how soon you're joining that group.
That's good.
There are millions of people that are waiting out there. Am I the one? No.
Can't wait to find out too.
It's not bad about the sisters or whose your prayer points they've been putting your name, but let's even talk about the parentage itself. I remember reading this book where they said about 75% of children today are broken adults. No, adults are broken children.
Yeah.
And the way it works is how you experience your formative years 0 to 7 pretty much determines how you show up in life.
Yeah.
I meet a lot of young people today who are shy. They're not able to pull their weight. Some of them are people who have just locked themselves out of opportunities because the way they were raised didn't offer them the experience to fully form.
Yeah.
And a lot of young people that you're mentoring today are people who have gone through this entire traumatic experiences where they show up with potential but locked up in their trauma. I wanted you to speak to what you're doing and how you guys are working together in that mentorship community with a lot of young people who are living beneath their potential, and how you guys are helping unlock for them that journey of healing and that journey of wholeness and that journey of purposeful living.
I mean, it's a very unintentional role that I took on as a big brother to young people, but a lot of it really, came from me even reflecting on, okay, where am I going? What are all the things that have helped me get here? What am I seeing people not do that I think they should be doing? And it tugged on my heart for at least 2 years before I even started to make any motion in that regard. And I think maybe that's also a good source for motivation to do things. When something obsesses you and you can't let go, you don't even know how it obsesses you. So that was the obsession that, I think I was possessed by. How do we get young people to to take responsibility for their lives? Because that's what it boils down to. Are you willing to confront despair? Are you willing to take responsibility? Do you understand that there's nobody who is coming to save you? It's like past the point, maybe when you're 18 years old, there's absolutely nothing your parents can do to, shape your future in one direction or the other. It's all on you. It's all on you. It's on the decisions that you make, especially if you don't come from an incredibly wealthy family. But even if you come from an incredibly wealthy family, all they can do is give you money, but that has no bearing on your destiny. So it's all on you, and there's no one who is coming to save you. But I don't think many people go on that journey of maturation early enough, and it's not their fault. I'm saying this with a lot of compassion because it requires a lot of tools, it requires a lot of even practical knowledge, skills, and I think we need to read more as a culture, because a lot of answers we need, if you read 1 or 2 books, you're like, wow, I found the answer to something I've been dealing with for a very long time. And so one of the things I do, because I try to read quite a bit, is there's a lot that I learn and try to distill it in hopefully ways that people understand it. I use my social media for that. I do that a lot in person too. I'm doing a public lecture series this year that's themed, what should young people do differently? And I don't know the answer, but I'm doing this selfishly. Through these lectures, I'm trying to figure out what the answer is. So last month in January, the topic was identity, and I went as deep as I could on the subject of identity to prepare for a 1-hour talk on average. Read a number of books, synthesized it, put my thoughts together. This month we're focused on career. Next month we're focused on purpose. The month after, I think we're doing habits, we're doing money, relationships, faith, fear. So all of these things that every young person is dealing with. So why are we all acting like we're not, and we're all posturing on Instagram and pretending that our lives are like perfect, and we're living this picture perfect lives and we're on vacation? Like it's all a lie. Like can we be serious for a second? We've not earned a lot of the lottery, and I don't mean as a culture. We've not earned a lot of the lottery we are positioning us. Like at this point, we have to understand that we are that generation that will sacrifice a lot, so the people who would come after us can actually genuinely live in a society that is healthy, that is economically prosperous, and not have to posture and tell lies behind Instagram filters and Instagram posts. So the earlier we recognize that, the better, but I don't think that we do. So that's, to answer your question, one of the reasons why I'm doing this, one of the reasons why we bring people together. We have this community called Limitless Club. We meet every week. We have 6 chapters in 2.
So we have a group in this office.
Yes, you do. Yes. And thank you for being our host. So we have 6 chapters across 2 states. We meet every week. We have a curriculum for every month. And now we're still trying to, for lack of a better word, get to product market fit and even understand who is this best suited for. But you can even see the transformation in the lives of the people who are here. And we've been around for 10 months? We've done this for 10 months now. We have about a little over 300 members globally. And it's clear that we need something like this. We need third spaces. When you're a parent and your child turns 18 and you no longer have...
So these are more peer-to-peer?
It's peer-to-peer for sure. Well, that's it. When you're a parent, when your child turns 18, you're no longer the biggest influence in their life. The biggest influence is their friends. So we...
From 15 actually.
Probably earlier. So you want to be sure that they can go out there into the world and have a positive gang, a gang that they are meeting with every week, and they're discussing productive things. They are thinking about ways to just stare into the abyss, to bear their yoke in their youth, as I like to say. And I think that's something every young person needs to do. We can't afford to be, 50-year-old, 15-year-olds. Like,
let's talk about something that was a big part of your year. I think last year, the year before, meeting Jordan Peterson and going for that program. How did you get there, and what was your biggest takeaway from meeting such a powerful thought leader?
So I mean, I found out about Dr. Peterson in 2018. So I found out about Dr. Peterson in 2018 when I was in Beijing, and I immediately just knew, like, yes. He describes a lot of thoughts that I very rudimentarily have, but I'm not able to put out in words. And of course, he's very well studied. He's very, very, very articulate, probably more articulate than anyone I've ever seen or met. And I've just followed his work since then, read his books, and I got the opportunity to. So he started this thing called the Peterson Academy, where he's trying to disrupt traditional universities education because he's run into many challenges with them, which I very much agree with. And the idea for that is to get the best teachers in the world to teach whatever they are interested in teaching, and have access to an audience in the hundreds of thousands and at some point millions of people, and people can learn from the best teachers in the world, without filters, without political correctness, without time constraints. 40-minute classes. These are long-winded classes that go all in on a researcher's original thoughts, and I think it's in line with what the original idea of school and university was. Yeah, when you think about the ancient Greek schools, that's what they were. You never really left school in ancient Greek societies. You started school when you were really young, and you didn't specialize in one thing. You studied alchemy, you studied science, you studied mathematics, arithmetic. So you did that for years. You never really left the school system. And I think something like that is really needed, because for us, we do 4 years of shabby education, and we go on, and people never really go back to studying or upskilling or reading. And that's the idea for this. And it was really great to get the opportunity to be selected to be a part of that. One of the inaugural class filmings, to do that in person. I also got the opportunity to meet Dr. Peterson on my birthday last year. We're close birthday mates. I'm born on June 11 and him June 12. And so he was turning 62 and I was turning 26, and I met him in DC, and one of the things I told him is I really hope at some point we're able to bring him to the continent. So I hope that happens. I hope that happens before he retires.
I think you will.
Yeah.
I think you will.
Yeah.
Can you just also think about spirituality?
Yeah.
I know faith is something you mentioned in one of the private lectures. You want to talk about faith, but I wanted you to walk us through your spiritual journey. What have you grown to know now you didn't know as a child, that has put you in a place of power and influence and reach that you're building now?
Yeah. So I was born Christian. I grew up in a Christian family, but I got born again 2 years ago, a little under 2 years ago. It's hard to actually pick a specific date when I got born again, but the date I'm working with is the 29th of June 2023, because that's when that was the first time I went to the church that I ultimately got born again, and it's Celebration Church. And I can't even take any credit for my salvation story, because I felt like God was just arresting me. It's like, okay, you this boy is okay. Now is the time. Come and you'll face your destiny in many ways. But it's probably the single biggest decision that I've made, or the single biggest thing that's happened to me. And I don't know how, it's very difficult to go through life without faith. It's very difficult, because when you're Christian, you're a pedestrian Christian, maybe you go to church every Sunday, maybe you you dance, all the Christians, so maybe even listen to Christian songs every day, but there's a very big difference between that and actually deciding that I am going to walk with God. We're also in a society where God is someone will go and steal from someone and say, God did. Like, it's a very taken for granted ceremonial thing to say God. Yes. But there's a very big difference between that and saying, oh, wow, I have a new Lord over my life. And there are things that I have to stop doing. There are things that I have to start doing. And it's not a matter of preference. And yes, God is a God of grace, and nothing would ever make him love you less. But it's like there are things you can't do. Like that is and the number of just personal consecrations that I have gotten as a result. There were ways that I went about my life that I can't obviously. And in many ways, even as a young man, even your relationship with people of the opposite sex, in your relationship with money, in your relationship with success, you have to redefine what all of those mean, and you have to set boundaries, and you have just one Lord. And what has that imbued me with? What I know now that I did not know when I was just a Christian who went to church, it is I can do at least as good as Jesus Christ did in his time, in my lifetime. Like if I pursued this with everything I had, I can do as good as that. I can do as good a job in bringing God's kingdom on earth, of reading people disabusing people's minds of atheism. The people who I know personally who have declared that they are atheists are probably people who need God the most, and these are great people. Their heads are in the right place. There are people who are just great people, and you can tell you really need God. You really need God. And so for me personally, it is I can't afford to not be serious. I think that's one thing I know. Going on this journey with a single-minded commitment, I cannot take things for granted. I have an assignment that the destinies of people are tied to, and so it's not up to did I wake up feeling lazy? Am I lazy this year? Do I just want to coast? It's not up to me anymore. Genuinely, it's not up to me anymore. And it feels good to be subservient to something, and I think everyone needs something to be subservient to.
Okay, Kenny, I love that you spoke about how spirituality and knowing Jesus can work its way through your entire life, redefining things.
Yeah.
Redefining what success is to you.
Yeah.
Redefining what relationship is to you.
Yeah.
I'd like to know, before we talk about relationship, how your definition of success has changed since after 2023.
If you ask me, and I probably said this on one or two interviews, if you ask me what mattered most to me maybe at the beginning of 2023, I'll tell you it's professional success that matters most to me. But it's childish, it's a very childish thing to be the thing that matters most to me. Because what are the sources of professional success mattering the most to me? It is the fear of failure, fear of insecurity, whether that's financial insecurity, the insecurity of irrelevance. They all drove that, deification of professional success. Do I care about professional success? Hell yes. Way more than the average person. But now I understand that professional success is a message. It is a means to an end. My professional success is not just for profession. Because honestly, if you have so much money, what do you do with so much money? So my professional success is going to be a way to fund meaningful work that needs to be done. That's one. Secondly, it's also going to be a billboard of what possibility looks like and a template for what that is. And I don't think we realize how much we need that. We need that. There's a dearth of role models. It's overflogged. A lot of people say, role model. But there's a dearth of role models when the average 13-year-old opens Instagram what aspirational characters are on there? Who do they aspire towards? Who are the loudest people? It's warped and it's not encouraging at all. Young people are not encouraged. They have no and we know how we feel when we encounter someone who challenges us. There are people, when we spend time around them, we just want to go and just like, let me just go and work. I just need to go and do meaningful things in life. And I had the opportunity to grow up around people like that, grow physically, grow up looking. I was trained to admire people like that. And that's what we need to do. We need to train people to admire positive examples. And honestly, at its core, that's who we are. Intrinsically, that's who we are. But we've artificially replaced it with admiring money and cars and, all of these vain things that are just so meaningless and so unfulfilling. And that's why personally, I pray that every young person encounters success really early. So we see that that's not the point. You can encounter it really early, put it by the wayside, and actually focus on what you're supposed to do with your life.
Powerful. Okay, also let's talk about today we talk about the percentage of marriages are failing. In America, is as much as 50%. And you're a single guy who is also, you've had almost 10 years of success. You started early from 16, you were already exposed, traveling. In thinking about the opposite sex, what are the things you look at in a lady and say, I admire this in any young lady? I think this is the kind of person that I want to spend the rest of my life with. Are there things you look at and say, okay, yes, I admire this and I want this for my child, I want this for my wife?
And the same goes for women assessing men. When you look at someone who you want to spend, the rest of your life with, and these priorities have also changed significantly since 2023 for me. Just like, okay, if this person were to be 100% trusted with raising the children I want to birth in the world, would I be happy with that? Would I trust that? And I think just psychologically, that's a good place to be. But a few things matter very greatly. The first thing is just faith. So where are you in your faith journey? Did you grow up in a Christian home where faith was prioritized? Even if you did not, at some point in your life, have you embraced it for yourself? Do you have something that you're passionate about? Like, it could be anything. It could be cameras. It could be flowers. I don't mean passionate about receiving flowers. I mean intrinsically passionate about something. Because that's very important. I don't think anyone wants to be with anyone reasonable, male or female folk alike, wants to be with anyone who is not interested in something, because then you would become that thing. And God, no one wants to be in that position where you are the thing that someone else is interested in, because Jesus, you don't want to be anyone's deity, for sure. You also just want to see that this person is productive in their lives in whatever way, shape, or form. They're able to sustain good relationships. If I am the only person you have a good relationship with, that's a problem,
I don't.
Yeah. So if everybody else, your friends, people who don't say good things about anyone, you really want to stay away from people like that. I think those are probably the most important things. Your ability to sustain. You have people who can vouch for you. You have your great faith walk. You have something. You're someone who can get passionate about something. It also doesn't matter if those passions change over time. Today it could be flowers. Tomorrow it could be whatever. That's perfect. Like, it should change.
Passion should be there.
Yeah, but just passion should be there. Something that imbues you with meaning as you navigate your way through life. That's very important. I think every person kind of looks out for that in other, and of course, someone who's generous. And I think faith is an umbrella that covers many things. If you're a person of faith, you should be generous. You should know how to walk in love. You should, know how to walk in faith and not be too afraid when things are not going as well as they could. It's just like that thing that will be sorted. That's fine, of course. So I think those are the most important things. Everything else is, I guess, an extra and down to like individual preference.
So Nigerian, this is one of Africa's most eligible. And you've heard it from the horse's mouth. 2 questions for us to call it a wrap. One of them is, go back to your 16-year-old self. What would you say to him if you were to meet
a 16-year-old self? Was in Calabar in 2014. Yeah, you literally can do whatever you want to do if you're as obsessed as you are about it, as if you're as obsessed about it as you are debate and school, you can do anything you want to do. You can do anything you want to do.
What would be your advice to an average Nigerian out there who is disillusioned about the prospect of opportunities and the state of the country and even their personal lives?
Yeah, you can only bet on yourself, so you can't control the things that are external. You can only bet on yourself. So, okay, what can you do for yourself to increase the likelihood that you transcend those things? And I think if everyone did that, then I guess we'd all transcend those things. And not to be, it's easy when someone like me gives advice like this. They'll say, you're talking from a position of privilege. But I'm trying to even tap into my pre-privileged self, if I can put it that way, to speak to this. What worked for me really was, well, the only person I have is myself. So I'm going to improve myself in every way I can and do that with an obsessive amount of belief in myself. That's something that's one of the most intangible inheritances a parent can give to a child. Just belief in yourself. You might not be the smartest, but believe in yourself. And with that level of belief in yourself, like if I had two people, one person who has an extraordinary amount of belief in themselves and is just averagely smart, and someone else who's incredibly smart but had an average level of belief in themselves, I'll bet on this guy. Because the world doesn't reward smartness in and of itself. The world rewards bravery and boldness and almost like maniacal belief in yourself and in the things that you want to do, and that's how we build great things. So just invest in your ability to believe in yourself. Like, learn that skill. Stop doing those things. We all know the things that detract from our self-worth and self-efficacy and self-confidence. When you lie too much, when you, like, after telling a lie, you're not feeling great about yourself. After doing things you shouldn't do, you're not feeling that great about yourself, in that moment, for sure. So if we stop doing those things, and even for me in my personal, like, stop doing those things, tell the truth more. Who should you confront? Be more confrontational. Stand up to that bully. All of those things make you start to develop a type of intangible self-confidence, that is contagious in other aspects of your life. And level up, develop yourself. As you're developing yourself intellectually and in school and financially, please be doing that morally, for lack of a better word. Right, all your endeavors should point towards something that is higher than you, and the only way you can do that is through a transformative relationship with God.
Awesome. What was the one question we should have asked you that we didn't?
Maybe, who do I want to be 30 years, 50 years from now?
So let's go there. Take us 30 years, 50 years from now. Where do you see Kenny?
I want to be someone who has lived honestly. Not perfectly by any stretch, but I hope I can be someone who has lived honestly and has inspired other people to live honestly. To stare into the abyss that is their own lives, and discover all of the ways in which they could get better and better and better every day, across all fronts, and then commit themselves to that. I hope I'm someone who has lived meaningfully, and has produced other people as a result who have lived meaningfully, and probably installed, a broad-based consciousness of meaningful, responsible living that aims towards the truth, and as a result generates significant amount of economic prosperity, especially for Africa, because I think we're the last hope for the world. I genuinely believe that. Africa is the last hope for the world as it exists right now.
Okay, is there a quote that summarizes your life in a quote?
I don't know. I don't think so.
One of the interesting quotes that I'm reminded of is something Miles Monroe said. And he said, die empty. Well, empty that which you came with, because you're loaded. Yeah. So we don't live here with anything left behind. Guys, this is very exciting time, and he's one of my very, very interesting young people that I admire. His gusto, energy, enthusiasm, passion for other people. And today we have a chance to look into his own journey and his story. It's one thing to start something and fail and pick it again and start again, but Kenny has redefined success, has redefined what it means to have a relationship with God, and moving your life from a time when your life is controlled by you to a time when you allow God to power your life. And just realizing that Jesus is not just an example for you, but of you. So he lived so you would live. And everything he lived in the world in his time, he's inviting us to live through us even in our time. So he did magnificent miracles, wonderful things, touched lives, changed people, brought justice, brought transformation. And I think we are invited to do the same, no less. So today we've learned about Kenny's story. Leave a comment, and I think you can always check out Kenny. Kenny has a huge following, but from Limitless community to even the programs he's powering for mentorship, I think it's something every young person out there can tap into and learn from. Guys, we're going to be back again, and I think for me this is about sharing the best stories of people working the journey, show you how they're living, evolving, growing, and becoming their full selves in the world today. Thank you guys for staying with us. We'll see you soon.